What's going on, guys? Welcome to this tutorial from Trust. So basically I'm going to show you how to create a responsive menu for your website. We're going to be using HTML, CSS and JavaScript, but before then let me just show you what we're going to learn. So this is like what the menu looks like on a desktop. So I'm going to hover and show you some of the effects. So we have this nice hover effect on the menu when it's on a desktop, and then when I reduce the width of my browser, you see that at some point it changes to this responsive drop down menu. So I'm just going to close that up and show you. So let me shrink it a little bit more, and if I click on this hamburger menu, it changes to this drop down menu with this hover effect as well. Okay, so basically that's what we're going to learn in this tutorial, and we're going to be learning that using HTML, CSS and JavaScript. Don't worry, I'm going to try as much as possible to make sure that I explain the concept properly, okay, so that you can understand and replicate this for your website freely. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new folder. I like doing my things from scratch and letting you see what I do. Okay, so I'm going to right click. I'm going to use Git Bash to create a new folder, and I'm going to create the files I need within it. So if you don't know about Git and GitHub in your journey of web development, then I encourage you to learn about Git and GitHub. In the link in the description, I'm going to leave a GitHub Crash Course I have on YouTube here, and I'm going to leave a link to my Udemy course where I teach Git and GitHub extensively. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a directory, and I'm going to name that directory menu. So menu with W. Okay, I'll hit enter, and basically this is the directory I just created on my desktop. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll navigate to that directory, and I'm going to create 3 files within that directory. So to do that, I'll say touch, and I'll create index.html. I'll create style.css, and I'm going to create script.js. Okay, and I'll hit enter. Okay, so basically I've just created 3 files within that folder I created right here. Okay, so within this folder I'm going to create an images folder where I'm going to drop my images I'll use in this tutorial. So I'm just going to say mkdir, and I'll say images. Okay, and I'll hit enter, and so yeah, so that's basically it. So like I said, I have a tutorial on how to use Git. Okay, and I believe it's something that every web developer should know. Okay, and I also leave a link in the description to my course on Udemy. All right, so let's get started. So what I'll do first is I'm going to bring in the images I used in the tutorial. So let me just quickly get the images quickly. Okay, so I got the images, and I'm just going to drop them within the images folder. So let me paste them in. Yeah, okay, so those are the 2 images, a logo and a background image. Okay, I am going to close this up, and right here from my Git Bash I'm going to open this folder in my code editor. So the way I'm going to do that, I'm going to say code and dot, and I'll hit enter. So it's opened up in my code editor, so we are good to go basically. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to shrink this up a little so I can have my browser here beside it. All right, so we're good to go. So let's get coding. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my index.html, and I think I can close this up. And within my index.html, I'm going to create my HTML boilerplate. So I'll just do that using Emmet. Okay, I'll leave a link in the description on how to use Emmet. So I'm going to give this a title of responsive menu. Okay, and I'm going to save that. And what else? I'm going to get my fonts. Okay, so basically I'm using Ionic icons. Okay, and I'll leave a link in the description to this, but I would also leave a link to my starter file, so you can just get the starter file and follow the tutorial. So I'll use Ionic icons, and basically I'm just going to get the link here. So this is the link, so I'll just copy it, and I'm going to paste it down here. Okay, so basically that's my setup. I'm done. But like I said, I'll leave a link in the description so you can just have this starter file and we can work together. One more thing is I'm going to add a script tag. Okay, so script tag, and my script is going to have a source, and that source is going to be my script.js file I created. So I'll just say script.js, and I think that's all I need to do. Okay, then one more thing, my styles.css. So I need to link my styles.css, and it's just going to be styles.css. Okay, so we are good to go. So this is the starter file. I'm going to leave a link in the description too, so you can just follow ahead from this point. Okay, so let's get started. So basically what I'm going to do now is I'm going to create my HTML, okay, for my responsive menu. Okay, so I'm going to create the HTML for this menu. So let's first of all, I'm going to open this up in a browser so we can see as development progress, and I'm going to open with live server. Okay, so we don't have anything on the page. All right, let's get started. So let's begin by creating our HTML. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a header tag. Okay, so like I said, I'm using Emmet. Okay, so Emmet helps me write HTML and CSS a lot faster. Okay, so I'm going to create a header tag, and within that header tag I'm going to create a div with a class of container. Okay, and within that div I'll create a nav. Okay, all right, so we're making progress. And then so within the nav I'll basically create an image tag and my menu and then my icon. Okay, so let's do that quickly. So basically I'm just going to say img, and my image is in my images folder, and basically I'm using the logo.png. Okay, so that's it. So next I'm going to create a div with a class of Hamburger. So I'll say .hamburger, or let me just say okay, Hamburger is fine. Okay, and I want it to have an ID because I'm going to select the ID using JavaScript. So Hamburger also, and I'll hit tab. Well, I think my editor is too small, so I'm just going to expand it just a little. Okay, so I expanded my code editor just a little, but one thing I'm going to do is I'm going to be adding comments. Okay, just so that we can have a clearer picture of what we are doing. So I'm going to add a comment here and say logo. Okay, and then just below the logo I'm going to add another comment and say Hamburger icon. Okay, so this should be H. All right, so this is the Hamburger div, and within the div with the class of Hamburger and an ID of Hamburger, I'm going to add my icon. Okay, so I'll just say I, and it will have a class of icon, and it's going to have another class of ion dash md dash menu. Okay, so that's it. So if I save, you should see that we have this logo here and we have this tiny icon here. Okay, don't worry about the size of the logo, we're going to do all of that with CSS. All right, so next I'm going to add my markup for my navigation. So I'm going to add a comment and I'll say navigation. Okay, and just below it I'll add my I'm simply going to add an unordered list. So I'll just say UL and I'll hit tab, and within it I'm going to add first off I'm going to add another icon. Okay, so I would add the close icon. So I'll say I with a class of icon, and it's going to have another class of ion -md -close, and then yeah, so that's what I want. Okay, so I'm going to give it another class. So I'm going to give it another class of close, and I'm also going to give it an ID of close. Okay, so I need this ID because I'm going to use the ID when I use JavaScript to manipulate the document, to manipulate the DOM. So what I'm going to do next is I'm just going to create a list, and I'll hit tab, and essentially within this list I'm going to create an a tag, okay, and this a tag is going to have a class of navlink. So I'll say a.navlink hyphen link, and I would hit enter. Okay, so I'm just going to duplicate this, so maybe like 4 times, and so the first one should be home, and about, and blog, and the last should be contact. Okay, so I'll save. So this is the nav link here, so home, about, blog, and contact. Well, it doesn't look pretty at this point, but don't worry, we are CSS, we're going to make things look pretty. Okay, so what I'm going to do is just below the header, I'm just going to add a section. Okay, so that's all I'm going to do. I'm just going to add a section and leave it blank. Okay, so let's go to our styles.css and let's get to work. Okay, so I'll go to styles.css and I'm going to begin adding styles. Okay, so the first thing, I'm just going to add some universal styles. Okay, so I'm going to use the universal selector, and I'm going to say I want a margin of 0 and a padding of 0, and of course I'm going to set the box sizing to border box. Okay, so as you can see, there is no margin around all of our elements. All right, so next let's go and target the HTML, and basically I'm just going to set the font family, and I'm not going to use any special fonts, okay, because this is basically just a menu. So I'm just going to say Helvetica and any other sans serif font if it's not available. Oh, this should be font family, not font weight, so that's why. Okay, so Helvetica, and so my code editor is giving me options here, and I'm going to set the font size to 10 pixels. Okay, then for the body, I'm just going to say I want it to have a width of 100%, and I'm also going to add a style for my container right away. So basically this container class, where is it? So this container class, which basically I would use in all the sections, I'm just going to add some styles for it. So I'll say dot container, and basically I'm just going to give it a width of 100%, but I'm also going to give it a max width of 120 rem. So essentially the 120 is going to be multiplied by this 10 pixels font size. Okay, so this would then be 1200 pixels. Okay, so but I'm sure you understand all of that already. So I'm going to give it a margin of 0 and auto, and I'm going to add some padding. Okay, so it's going to be 0 on the top and bottom, and 1.5 rem on the right and left, and then I'll save. So as you can see, we have some padding around it. Okay, then for my image, I'm just going to write a style for my image. So I'm just going to say img, and basically I want it to have a max width of 100%. Okay, all right, so let's begin to add some styles. So first of all, I'll add a comment, and I'll say navigation, maybe section, and I'll save. Okay, all right, so let's begin to add some styles. So I would start from the header. Okay, so let's target the header here, and let's give the header a width of course, of 100%. And let's give it a background color. So this background color we have in our header here, that's what we're going to set. Okay. So I'm going to give it a background color of blue violet. I think I already have it here, and I will save. Okay, so we have this background here. Okay. Let's target the nav, and we're going to give the nav also a width of 100%, and we're going to say display flex. So essentially, the display flex property is simply going to align all the items within the nav horizontally. Okay, so that's basically what we just did. And to make this thing look better, what I'm going to do is I'm going to, well, maybe I will just undo this color first so that we can see what we are doing. Okay, so I've removed the color, the background color. So what I'm going to do is, before I add more styles to the nav, I'm just going to say nav an image, and I'm going to target the img, and I'm going to give it a height of 5 rem. So that's 50 pixels. Okay, so we have it looking better. Okay, so let's continue. Maybe I should increase the font of this just a little. Okay, so this is fine. So we've given it a display of flex, and basically let's justify our content to space between. So let's see what that does. I'm going to save, and essentially it's puts equal amount of space between the elements within the nav. Okay, so that's what we just did. Okay, so space between, and then let's align items to center and save. Okay, so you see that everything is aligned in the center, right? Okay, so let's continue. All right, so what we're going to do now is we're going to just add our own padding here, and basically I'm going to add 1 rem on the top and bottom, and another 1.5 rem on the right and left, and I'm going to save. Okay, so we have some space here, some padding here once more. So I think at this point I can add my background just to see. Let me just show you. So you see that it looks better now, even though we've not added some more styles. Okay, so let's continue. I'm going to target the unordered list at this point. So I'll say, let me see. So this is the unordered list. I'm going to give this a class of nav and maybe unordered list. Okay, so this is what I'm going to target here. So I'll go back to my styles, and I'm just going to say, so .nav -ul, and I'm going to give it a display of flex. Okay, so basically this unordered list here, I want to also give it a display of flex. So I'll save that and see what happens. So once again, I think I should remove the background color, maybe see better. Okay, so when I gave it a display of flex, it's aligned the menu items horizontally. Okay, so that's one of the powers of using the flex box. Okay, all right, let's continue. So of course I will do some align item, and I'll say center, and of course I'm still going to justify content center. Okay, now let's do some list style. Let's remove the list style, and I'll set it to none and save. So you see that the dots that is in front of all of the menu items have disappeared. Okay, all right, so let's move on. So I would say .nav ul, and basically what I want to do is I want to target the list items and the a tag. Okay, so within this list item and a tag, I'm going to set the display to inline block. Okay, and I'm going to set the font family. So instead of typing out the font family here, I'm just going to get it from this guy here, because apparently the font family does not doesn't work on the a tags. Okay, so you have to set it again. So I'll just set the font family, and then I'm going to set the font size to 1.4 em. Okay, so we have it, a little bit bolder. Let's transform it to uppercase. So text transform. So that should be transformed to uppercase. And so we have it in uppercase here. So I'm just going to reduce this just a little bit. Okay, so we are getting closer to what we have here. Just we still need to do some more work. So text transform uppercase. All right, next I'm going to do text decoration, and I'm going to set it also to none, and I'll save. So you see that the underlines have removed. Okay, so that's what the text decoration does. Okay, let's add a little bit of padding. So I'm just going to do 1 rem on the top and bottom and 0 on the left and right, and then I'll save. Then I'm going to add margin, but just on the left, and I'm just going to say 3 rem, and I'll save. Okay, so you see that it's spaced out here now, right? So it's looking closer to what we have here, so it's a little bit spaced out now. All right, let's continue. Next I'm going to give it a color of, I'm just going to give it a white color. But before I give it a white color, let's come to our background and restore our background. So I'll save the background before I come here and say #fff. So #fff, and I'll save. Okay, so we have the menu, looking neat. So we've done so much already. So we're up to this point where we have the menu and stuff. Okay, so let's continue. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to target the hamburger icon. Okay, so this icon here is what I'm going to target and style. So I'll say .hamburger, and I'm also going to use the opportunity to add the icon, and then I'm going to add my styles. That's because I want to target the hamburger, but I also want to get this icon too, to add some styles to it. So I'm just going to say I want a font size of 3.5 rem. So let me increase the font size considerably. So you see that it's big here. And then of course I'm going to change the color to white. So that's #fff. Okay. And let's make it such that when we hover on it, it's has a pointer. So I'll say cursor, and that's going to be set to pointer, and I'll save. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to hide this hamburger, okay, at this point. So because initially when you are viewing on a width that is less than the mobile device, you can see the menu. It's only when you get to the mobile width that you then see the hamburger icon. So initially this hamburger icon is hidden. Okay, so that's what we're going to do. So I'm going to come here and I'm going to target the hamburger icon. So I'm going to say .hamburger, and I'm going to, what am I going to do? I'm going to set the display to none. Okay, and then I'll save. So the hamburger icon is out of the flow of the page. Okay, all right. So I'm also going to hide this icon here, this close icon here. Okay, so I think something is missing. I want this close icon to be like the hamburger. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go closely to it. Okay, so apparently I figured that this close icon here is not taking the styles for the hamburger icon. So I think, let me just see. Okay, so I did not add a dot here, so I'm just going to add a dot and save. Okay, so yes, so the close icon is now taking the styles. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to target the close icon and I'm going to hide it as well, because we don't need it displayed on the desktop like this. So basically I'm just going to say dot close, and I'm just going to say display, and I'm going to set it to none and save. So you see we don't have that close icon on the like any width that is greater than that of the mobile device. Okay, so let's just say desktop for example. So we're not going to have that close icon here because we've hidden it as well. So what I want us to do first is I want us to add the styles that would put this effect, you know, this effect here, this hover effect, if you may. So let's do that first. So we're going to do that using media queries. Okay, and specifically we're going to target screens that are greater than 500. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to come here and I'm going to add a comment, and I'll say media query. Okay, and then I'll save, and let me add another comment here. I'll say media query for devices above, let's just say 500 pixels. Okay, and I'll save. So this is how you add your media query. So you say add media and screen. Okay, and then you say, and you put in brackets, you say max width. So because we want to target screens that are for devices that are 500 pixels and above, we're going to say min width, and I'm just going to say 501 pixels. Okay, yeah. So basically we can then begin to write our styles. So any styles we write here would affect the website when we have screens that are 501 pixels and above. Okay, that's min width. So basically the first thing I will do is I'm going to go to my index.html and I'm going to add a class to the first link. Okay, because if you look here you see that the first link has this style, okay, just under it. Okay, so I'm going to add a class for the first link. So this is the first link. I'm going to add an additional class and I'll say current, and then I'll save. Okay, so I'm going to target that current. So let's go back to our styles, and basically the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to say nav link to target the nav link. Okay, so I'll add a comma, and then I would also target the current. And then basically what I'm going to do just here is I'm just going to say position, and I'm going to set it to relative, and you'll see why shortly. So it doesn't quite do anything on the page, but because we're going to use the before and after pseudo class, that's why we set our position to relative. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to copy this and I'm going to paste it here, but this time I'm going to add a pseudo class of before, and here I'm going to add a pseudo class of before. Okay, and then I'll just change my styles. So what I'm going to do first is, maybe I should just, so I'm going to set my content. I'll just add it, I'll just leave it blank, and here I'm going to change the position to absolute. Okay, all right. So I'm going to say left. From the left it should be 0, and from the bottom it's going to be minus 0.3 rem. So I'll say minus point, so I can see it's actually minus 0.3, but I can just say minus 0.3 rem. Okay, which is equals to 3 pixels. Okay, so I'm pushing it down. So basically I'm going to give it a width of 100%, and I'm going to give it a height of 2 pixels. And let's add a background color. So the background color is going to have a code of #EB648C, and then I'll save. Okay. So basically you see that we have this hamburger menu, but it's displayed on everything. Okay, and that's not what we want. So let's continue adding our styles. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say transform. Okay, and essentially I'm just going to make this disappear. So I'll say scale in the X direction. So I'm just going to select it and I'm going to set it to 0. Okay, I'll save, and then I'll set the transform origin to left. Essentially what I'm doing now is that I am this hover this effect you see here, that when you hover on the menu item, it moves from the left to the right. So that's basically what the transform origin does. Okay, so let's continue. So of course I'm going to set a transition, and I'll just say transform, and I'm going to say 0.6 seconds. Okay, now of course we have not quite achieved what we want here, because on this current home menu menu item here, we have this red line, would I say red line, just below it. So we need to set that here. Okay, so the way you do that is we're going to target the current. So I'll say dot current, and I'll say before, and essentially I'm just going to change this transform to 1. So I'll copy this, come here and paste it in, and I'm going to change it to 1 and save. Okay, so essentially in this transform here, I hid this bar just below the menu item, but I wrote another class here and I changed it from scale x0 to 1. Okay, so that's why we can see it here. All right, so one more thing we need to do is we need to then set the hover effect for this other menu. Okay, so basically I'm just going to say so I'll target the nav link, and essentially not nav view or nav link, and I'll say hover before. So I'm saying that when you hover on the nav link, I want to transform back to, what am I doing? So I'll come here and paste it in, and then I'll save. Now what this does is that it creates the hover effect. So as you can see, we now have our hover effect. So I think at this point we are done with the desktop view. Okay, so what I'm going to do next is I'm going to create the mobile menu. So let me just reduce this. So we're going to create all of this effect. Okay, so let's come back here and see. So this is what we just did. So basically I think I should add the image here so that we can have something similar to what we are creating. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the sections area. So I'll just put that somewhere up top. So essentially I'm targeting this empty section tag here. So I'm just going to say section, and I'm just going to give it a height of 100 VH, That's 100% of the viewport height. And I'm going to give it a background image of, so I'll say I'll add a URL and I will then say images, so /, so images, there should be like, okay, yeah, so /, so yeah, so bg.jpg, and then I would save. Okay, so we have this image here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to set the background size. I'm going to set it to cover, and I'll save. Okay, so we have the image here just like we have on the initial demo. Okay, so what we want to work on now is we want to work on the mobile hamburger icon and the mobile menu. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to shrink this. So let me just shrink it to the point where we have the mobile menu. Okay, all right, so let's begin work. So what I'm going to do now here is I'm going to add another media query for devices that are below 500 pixels. Okay, so I'll just copy this, Control C, and let's go down and paste it here. So I'm just going to change this to below. Okay, and I'll save. All right, so let's get to work. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to target the nav. So let's just go, so nav and ul. Okay, so that's going to be a class. Oh, I've not added my media. So first of all, I'll say and media, and I'll say screen, and so this is going to be max width of, I'll just say 500 px. So basically what this means is that for any device width that is 500 px and below, okay, the following styles will be applied. So let's begin writing our styles. So the first thing is I'll target the nav ul class, okay, which is where we have our links. And basically I'm going to set, first of all, I'm going to set it to, I'm going to change the flex direction. So I'll say flex and direction, and I'll set it to column, and then I'll save. So you see what that did? It changed the change the layout for this menu from a horizontal to a vertical layout. Okay, so let's go ahead and add some more styles. So I'll give it a width of 100%. Maybe I should even put that upward. So width of 100%, and I'll save. Well, it's not looking like what we want, and that's because if we go up top here, we need to change the nav ul flex. So we need to say we want the flex wrap to be wrap, and then save. Okay, I know this should be in the nav, so I'm going to cut this out. So this should be in the nav. Yeah, so here. So I'll just paste it in and save. Okay, yeah, so we're getting there. So it's similar to what we have. Okay, so it's just that we've not displayed our hamburger icon yet, but we will. Okay, so yeah, so let's go back down and continue our project. So I'm going to set the display to none, and I'm going to add a margin, but this time it's just going to be just on the top. So I'll say 1 rem on the top. Okay, and then I'll save. So don't worry about the fact that it has disappeared. We're going to fix that. So what I'm going to do is, maybe I should remove the display none first so we can see what we're doing. Okay, so what I'm going to do next is I'm going to add the borders around it. So the way we do that is, basically I'm going to say .nav UL, and I'm going to target the list items. And first off, I'm going to give it a width of 100%, and I'm going to say text align just to make sure that it's centered. Center, and then I'm going to give it a border, so border, and it's going to be on top, border top to solid, 1px first, and solid, that should be solid. And basically I'm going to use RGBA, and I'm just going to give it a gray color, but I'm going to set the opacity to 0.4. okay, so you see we have this border we have on the menu here. Okay, so we're getting there, we're making progress. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is, of course, you notice that the last item here doesn't have a border. So unlike here where we see that after the contact there is a border here, so let's just quickly do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this guy here and replicate it here, and of course I don't need first two styles, so I'm going to remove them, and I'm going to add a last child. Okay, so I'll say last child. So basically what this style is that it's going to target the last child of the list items. Okay, and I'm going to change this to border bottom, and then I'll save. Okay, so we have a border at the bottom here. Okay, all right, so next let's add a what are we going to add now? We're going to add the hover feature here. So if we come here, you see that we have like a hover feature. Okay, so let's add that here. So I'm going to say nav list, and let me just grab this, and I'm going to paste that in, but this time I'm going to say that when you hover on it, so I would say hover, and basically what I want is I want it to have a background color, so I'll just say background color, and of course it's going to be RGBA too, because I'm just going to use black, so it will be 0 0 0 and .1. The opacity is going to be 0.1, and then I'll save. So you see that when I hover on it, I have this black, almost transparent black here. Okay, so we're making progress. Now we're going to use JavaScript to do some things here. Okay, so first what I'm going to do is I'm going to target the X icon. Okay, so I would say .nav, so that should be .nav -ul, and I'll say .close. Okay, so I'm targeting the close icon first, and I would say I want it to be display and block, and then I'll save. Okay, so we have this X icon here. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this such that this X icon is displayed somewhere here. Okay, so for that to be possible, I will need to come up, and let's look for the close. Okay, so the styles here, this dot close here, this is where we get to add the positioning. So I'll say position, and I'm going to say absolute. Okay, and of course from the top it's going to be 0, and from the right it's going to be 0. So I would save. Let's just see. So you see that we have it here, okay, but of course this is too much. So what I would do is I would say I'm going to add some kind of padding, okay. So I would say padding, and I would say 1.5 rem and 3 rem. So from the top is going to be 1.5 rem, and from the right is going to be 3 rem, okay. And I'll just say 0 0. So when you have 4 numbers for values like padding or margin, the first is for the top, the second is for the right, the third is for the bottom, and the last is for the left. So it goes in a clockwise direction. If I save that, I think this should come. Okay, so we have it here. Okay, so yeah, so we are making progress here. So let's go back. I want us to finish writing our styles before we add JavaScript. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create um a hide and a show class, okay, that we would use JavaScript to toggle when we click on the menu here, okay. So what I'm going to the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to say dot show, okay, and basically I'm going to set it to display text, and I'm going to set the, okay, I think I'll just leave it like that, and I'm going to say dot hide, and I'm going to set it to display none, okay. And then so now we're going to use JavaScript um, to toggle the hide and the show classes that we just created, okay. All right, so let's quickly go there. So but before then I'm going to hide this menu. So let's come to navul and let's hide it, and I'll save. And I want the hamburger menu to be displayed initially. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come here and I'm going to say dot hamburger, and I'm going to set the display block and save. Okay, so we have the hamburger menu displayed initially. If you click on it, it doesn't do anything, okay, but we're going to use JavaScript to add this dot show class to the nav list, the navul, when we click on the hamburger menu. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on my script.js file, okay, and let's so what I'm going to do first is let me add a comment, and I would say hamburger juggler, okay. So the first thing is I'm going to create a variable. So I'll say const hamburger, and essentially I'm going to use document dot get element by id, and basically what I'm looking for is I want to get the hamburger id. So let me go to my index.html and show you what I'm after. So I'm after this id here of hamburger in the div that contains the hamburger menu icon here, okay. So this is the id I'm after, okay. So I'll come to my js file and I'll say hamburger, okay, and that's it. I'll close my JavaScript statement. I'll create another const, or maybe what I'll just do is I'll just replicate this twice. Okay, and this time I'm going to create a variable for the close, and this time what I'm targeting is the close ID. So let me show you in the index.html. So I'm targeting let's see, this first icon here with an ID of close. Okay, I'm targeting it with this line here. All right, so I'm going to create one more, and basically I'm just going to say so nav and ul, and basically I'm going to get the nav. Okay, so and if so one thing is that all of this should be in double quotes, so in quotes rather. So let me just add the quotes quickly. So I'm sorry I missed that. All right, so all of them are in quotes. So this last line here is targeting this ID. So let me go to my index.html and show you. So it's supposed to target this ID here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add an ID of nav-ul, and I'm going to save. So let's go back to our JavaScript file. So you see that we are sequential in what we are doing. So next, let's add excuse me. So next, let's add some lines here. So I'll say hamburger, and basically I want to add an event is listener. So I'll say add event listener, and essentially it's going to be a click event. So I would say click, and so I'm just going to bring that here, and this is where we will add what we want to happen. So the first thing is that I want the nav UL. I want to add a class list, a class to the nav UL, and I want to add a class of show. Okay, so what I'll do is I would say class list and dot toggle, and basically I'm just going to say I want to use the class of show. Okay, so let me just add the second line before I explain what I'm doing here. Okay, I I didn't add a comma here, so let me just add a comma. I think that's why I'm having, all right, so there's the comma here. That's why I was having some. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate this, and this time I would add the hamburger class. So I'll say hamburger, so this time I'm going to hide it. So let me explain what we did here. So basically what we did here is that we said that when we click on the hamburger, okay, this hamburger has an ID of hamburger, right? We said when we click on it, we want to toggle the show and the hide class. Now this is the show and the hide class we created here. Okay, so essentially when we toggle on it, it's going to show the nav UL. Okay, when we click on it one more time, it's going to hide it. Okay, so let's go ahead and save this, and let's see what happens. So you can see as we clicked on it, it showed this guy. So this is the first function here that is taking place, or this line of code here. So it says that when we click on it the first time, it will add this class of show to the nav UL, okay, to the nav UL ID, which is this guy here. So this ID of nav UL, okay, And then this second line here is saying that when we click on it, it will add the class of hide, which is this class we created here. So display none. So I'm going to well, it won't happen now, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to add another class here, okay, to make sure that this, hides it. All right, so basically what we're going to do now is we're going to add another rule, okay, and this time we're going to say close dot add event listener, and it's going to be a click event also. So let me add my semicolon and let's add our rule. Okay, so the first rule we are going to do is we're going to say nav.ul and of course dot class list, and basically we're going to toggle the show class. So don't worry, I'm going to explain what we're doing, and let's add a semicolon to close it. And then we're going to get the hamburger once more dot class list, and of course we're going to toggle a class, and we're going to toggle the hide, and of course let's add our semicolon and save. Okay, so let's do a recap of what we've done so far. So basically this first line here, we said that when we click on this hamburger icon, we want to show the nav, okay, and we want to hide the hamburger icon. Okay, now remember, so let me just do that. So we show the navigation and we hid the hamburger icon. Now in this second lines here, we say that when we click on the close icon, which is this guy here with an ID of close, we want to toggle the show class. In other words, we want to remove the show class from this nav, and we want to toggle the hide class for the hamburger icon. In other words, we want to remove the hide class for the hamburger icon. So I'm going to click on it and boom. Okay, so basically that's what we just did. Okay, so now let's go ahead and expand our tab and see what we've done so far. Okay, so I've just expanded the tab, and as you can see, we have it working. We have our hover effect here, and let's reduce it to 500, and it changes to this hamburger icon. If I click on the hamburger icon, you see that my hover feature works. Okay, and if I close this up, it closes seamlessly. Okay, so basically we've been able to use HTML, CSS, and JavaScript to create a responsive menu in this tutorial. First off, I want to thank you so much for watching this tutorial. If you're not subscribed to my channel, make sure to subscribe immediately, because I create content around web development and other interesting areas. Thank you so much, and see you in another video. Don't forget to leave a feedback on the comment section on how you would like me to improve and other tutorials you like me to make. Thank you so much. See you later.